He's my feet touch. I did try it underneath the desk.
We're gonna ask you, is Tom attending?
As far as I know, yeah.
Okay.
Not study. Oh, is he not? He won't make it study. He might be late for regular. I got that as I was going to the park. Oh. So gives us a study. All right, we'll call to order our study meeting for the West Valley City Council. It is August 9th, 2022. And it is 4:33, and we are in the multi-purpose room of City Hall. Looks like Councilman Hoon is absent, excused, and everyone else is in attendance. Councilman Fitzmanu is on Zoom. And then we have Mr. Pyle at the table with us and Ms. Kamick, our city reporter. So we have the minutes of July 26, 2022. Turn it to council for discussion or a motion.
Move to approve the minutes of July 26th. Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those are approved. We have a review of the regular meeting agenda. Are there any changes,
No,
Mr.
ma'am.
Pyle?
All the same and no additions, no change of
Okay.
information.
Is there any discussion on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to resolution 22-126. And we'll turn the time over to Mr. Pyle to introduce it, and then Chief Jacobs is on Zoom.
Okay, thanks, ma'am. I don't know that I really need to do any introduction to previous to Chief Jacobs. I will say, just in terms of the recommendation, it was my privilege to work really closely with the police department back in 2020, when our public order unit, which we've trained for and equipped and used extensively in that year, was utilized. It's very valuable, and it's a unit that is very specific in their training, their qualifications, much needed throughout the valley, provided a lot of support to other agencies in the valley. And so I definitely think this is a worthwhile effort. So with that, I'll give it to Chief Jacobs.
Chief?
Thank you. Yes, this has been in the works for a couple of years now. We love our letters, and this is an MOU for a POU, Memorandum of Understanding for a Valley Regional Public Order Unit. It became very apparent in the summer of 2020 that especially some of the smaller agencies would not be able to have the proper staffing to handle a major public order disturbance, and thus the valley-wide public order unit has been created to help facilitate with any public order disturbance throughout the valley. And it's divided into 3 different teams, and West Valley is lead on one of the teams.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the council?
What are the 2 teams?
What are the other 2 teams, Chief?
Salt Lake City and Department of Public Safety
Thank you.
are leads, but we all have members from other agencies that are on board with our team. For example, our team consists of members from South Salt Lake, Taylorsville, and I believe West Jordan.
Okay.
So Chief, could you just briefly kind of give us a scenario where this would come into play?
Well, if Salt Lake City has another riot where cars are being overturned and set on fire, it's up to the department head of that agency involved to basically request the bat signal, and they would ask for their particular public order representative to request assistance from the unit that they're involved with, and from there it would be expanded and relieved with time as needed. So for us, for example, if we had some sort of extreme disruption at the mall. If one of their concerts went sideways, we would most likely request assistance from the Valleywide Public Order Unit to help contain and control that particular type of disturbance.
Anyone else? I will say that the 2020 incident from outside agencies, there was a lot of praise that I heard personally for West Valley City. So I know our department does a very good job of that. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We were one of the few agencies that had personnel and equipment ready to go for that particular event.
Okay. And then when we had any maybes, you guys were at the ready as well. So
Yes, and we had some of the other public order units, specifically Salt Lake City and Department of Public Safety, that were here and ready to roll out if things went sideways, but fortunately, we never had to deploy them here.
okay, thank you. All right, we'll now move on to our new business and we'll consider application S to 2022. Mr. Pyle.
Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, wait.
I'm gonna just, I think.
I was gonna
it's Mr.
say, yeah, it
Lehman,
is.
isn't it?
Yep.
Yep, there he is. Let's just.
Just
bring it
not
over
seeing
here.
them in person.
That's all right.
Okay. And you have two of them, so I'll just let you do them back to back.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So first application that's up on the screen is a request from DAI. Oops, okay, thanks, Eric. Let's go to the boot camp booster station. All right, there you go. So this is a request from Ranger Hunter Improvement District. They're requesting final plat approval for a unique subdivision, which really consists of a number of water tanks. This property is jointly owned with Ranger Hunter Improvement District as well as the Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District. So property is located on 4800 West, just north of 4415 South. So the next illustration is just a zoomed in version. So there's a number of water tanks that services West Valley City, as well as the booster station that sits up closer to 4800 West. The next slide is a picture looking into the site. So the booster stations are there in the buildings. You can see the large tanks in and behind. And we just have a couple other pictures for you. So the next one is just looking into the site from 4800 West. And then the next one is looking on the north side of the Utah Salt Lake Canal into the site. And then the plat itself is relatively simple. The purpose of which is to create 3 lots. So Ranger Hunter Improvement District is purchasing a 5 million gallon tank from Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District. And as they've collaborated on this application, they felt that it would be best to have each of their facilities in individual ownership. And so that is the purpose of the subdivision application, is to create a lot for the Granger Hunter tank and booster stations, as well as Jordan Valley Water Conservancy property. And that is our report.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on this application? All right, let's move on to application SD3 2022.
All right, thank you. So this application is a request by DAI Utah LLC to dedicate a portion of Decker Lane. So this portion of Decker Lane and the portion of Decker Lake Boulevard just to the north here that leads up to the Franklin buildings were dedicated in 2003. At that time, public improvements were existing, consisting of curb gutter and sidewalk on the side closest to Decker Lake. So that gives you kind of the background about how the roads became dedicated rights of way. We'll just show you a few slides here. So the first illustration is looking from Decker Lake Boulevard on the north end of this property. So you can see Decker Lake off to the right and the sidewalk that is adjacent to the lake. So the next slide is about halfway into the project. So the property, you can see a stake there with a purple or a pink ribbon. This is property that will be developed, that will be known as the H2O lofts. The council may recall a rezone application for this project. It is a residential community. As we began reviewing the site plan, it became apparent that we wanted park strip and sidewalk on the east side of Decker Lane. As you can see, that is void on this portion of right-of-way. So the purpose of this plat is to dedicate that property. Just have a couple other slides to show you. So the next illustration is looking in sort of to the bulk of where the project will be located. And then the next slide is all the way to the south, and you can see the gated portion of the state property there. And then the subdivision plat itself is a little bit unique. The crosshatched area there, where Eric has the little hand, that is the portion of property that will be dedicated. It will be 10 feet in width, the purpose of which is to make sure that the project has park strip as well as sidewalk to move pedestrians that will be locating into this project. And that is our report.
Okay, thank you. Council have any questions for Mr. Lehman? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we will now have our communication items, and we'll start with Jordan River Commission. And we'll turn the time to Mr. Soren Simonson. And he's our director. Yeah, up at the, and I don't know if you need to plug it in, what to do there, so.
I've got the presentation ready.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm Soren Simonson, the Executive Director of the Jordan River Commission, and it's great to be with you again today. It's been a while since I've been with the West Valley City Council, and it's great to join you. Some of you may not be very familiar, so let me just take a minute and just remind you who we are and what we do. We're basically a partnership that was created in 2010 through an interlocal agreement, which currently includes about 30 public agencies. All 16 cities that touch the Jordan River are participating. 2 of the 3 counties, a number of special service and utility districts, 3 state agencies, the Department of Natural Resources, the Department of Environmental Quality, and most recently, the Department of Transportation, UTA, and a number of other organizations all participate in this interlocal agency. And we're basically working together to try and improve, restore, conserve, and develop outdoor recreation opportunities around the Jordan River, which is a regional amenity, an asset, a natural resource, and do things that nobody can do on their own. Because there's so many agencies that all have a piece of the Jordan River, we work to make sure that we're working in the same direction. We're guided by a document that's called the Blueprint Jordan River that was created originally in 2008 by Envision Utah and all of those partners that came together and said, what is our shared vision? We decided about 4 years ago in 2018 that we wanted to revisit because the blueprint, because we'd accomplished many things like creating a continuous trail along the entire length of the Jordan River. Many conservation, restoration, park, and natural land projects have been completed. And we wanted to kind of reassess and see what should we be doing over the next decade. And so we applied for some grant programs. We were successful in finding a grant through the Transportation Land Use Connection Program of the Wasatch Front Regional Council. And we brought Envision Utah back as a lead consultant. We also added to that team a number of other specialty consultants around restoration, conservation, active transportation, land development, and other areas of expertise. Can I forward this just by pushing the screen, or should I have you do that, Nicole?
You can go ahead and do that, or
Okay. Okay. There we go. It might be easiest if I manage it because I know we have short time. So we had over 8,000 residents across the Wasatch Front that participated in this program through focus group meetings, through an online survey. We started the work on this just as the pandemic hit. And so we appreciate Envision Utah and the consulting team who allowed us to kind of pivot and do more online than we were expecting to do. But it turned out to be a really great way to connect with people, especially people that had a lot of time on their hands because they weren't doing a lot of things they normally did. And also because a lot of people were there were stretches of the Jordan River Trail where we have trail counters that we saw a 400% increase in trail activity between the spring of 2019 and the spring of 2020. It's great that we had this resource available to so many people when they were limited in things they could do, and what a great outdoor amenity it is. Many of you are familiar with the Jordan River. You probably know the section in West Valley City best, but it's a unique river. It's only 50 miles in length. It connects Utah's two largest water bodies, the freshwater Utah Lake and the terminal basin of the Great Salt Lake. And of course, we've been hearing a lot about the plight of the diminishing Great Salt Lake, and it's easy to see why that's happening because you see many of the same things along the Jordan River. There's just not a lot of water in the river. And if there's not water in the tributaries to the Great Salt Lake, there's not water in the lake itself. The blueprint, in this update to the blueprint, we've highlighted some of those accomplishments. The trail, as I mentioned, is completed. There's been a lot of focus on water quality and water quantity, some real changes in a number of state policies, including several that happened this year as a result of some of the work that we've been doing over the last several years. So let me highlight what is in this blueprint. This will just be a very high level, and I'll try and highlight some things that I think will be important to West Valley as well. We started with some listening groups. We had 7 categories that included things like public safety and outdoor recreation and land development, transportation, water quality, and the river itself. And each of these working groups had subject matter experts that we drew from across the community. Many of them are people and organizations that we've worked with for decades. Those focus group meetings were done online, and they included a lot of really innovative ideas. We took a lot of those ideas and put together this survey that went out to the public that gave us an opportunity to hear from the community about what they thought about new ideas and some of the accomplishments and where we might focus. And then Envision Utah and this consulting team helped us strategize. Not surprisingly, we saw that the Jordan River was very, very important among those things we asked in the survey. One of the highest areas of preference was people saw the Jordan River as being really important versus unimportant. And then there were a lot of other things, natural versus developed, recreation opportunities versus lack of opportunities. The other thing that I think also wasn't a surprise, because this really echoed what was in the original blueprint, is that people really love the natural open space around the Jordan River. And in fact, right behind that in terms of preference was natural open space with limited access. And we have a handful of those sites along the Jordan River. I don't think any of them are here in West Valley, but there are some places in Davis County, particularly the 2,500 acre Legacy Nature Preserve that was created as part of the Legacy Highway, just about the time the original blueprint was developed. That is being developed really wonderfully as a nesting and resting ground for migratory birds. The Mitigation Commission, which is a federal and state partnership, has created a number of other natural open spaces that have very limited access down in South Jordan and Riverton and Draper areas as well. So this is really, the original blueprint was kind of a high level vision for the river. What we wanted to do with this update was really look at how do we become very strategic in the things that we're trying to accomplish. And so this update to the Jordan River was written much more as a strategic plan. It still has all of those vision elements, but it also incorporates how do we get them done and who are the right players to be involved. So let me just briefly touch on each of these areas, and I'll try and highlight some things that may be important. The 7 categories or sections of the blueprint include habitat and natural systems, water and the river, comfort and inclusivity, recreation, safety and well-being, development and transportation, and communications, education, and the arts. A couple of these are new sections. The public safety one is a new section. The comfort and inclusivity is a new section, and communications, education, and art is kind of a modified new section. The other sections that were in the original blueprint have kind of been folded into these others where it made sense. I'm not going to go through all of these in detail. You can read the screen. I will highlight some areas that I thought were really important and kind of meaningful that I think you'll find meaningful in your community as well. Our goals under open space, including protecting and preserving natural open space where possible, optimizing habitat and natural ecosystems, a couple of new goals and strategies that came out of this. One of them is developing monitoring and evaluation plans. You know, we've seen a lot of successes, but as we're looking at funding around the Jordan River, including some new funding sources that came from the state legislature, some things that are really important are how do we measure success and what are we accomplishing with some of these goals? And providing additional resources to landowners. A lot of the original blueprint focused on things that public agencies could do. There was a lot more focus in recognizing that while there is a lot of public land around the Jordan River, there's a lot more private land around the Jordan River. And how do we provide tools and resources for those that manage homes and gardens and yards and businesses that are near the Jordan River to take advantage of opportunities, but also to help manage their properties. And so one of the ideas that came out of this is how do we provide tools and resources for private property owners so that they can do things that enhance this corridor, things like updating their own landscaping that's much more compatible with trying to preserve and enhance wildlife, planting the right trees and the right kinds of pollinator plants and things like that around the Jordan River, even on private property, can be really valuable and important. There are maps associated with each of these sections that highlight different areas as well. Underwater, the original blueprint really just focused on this narrow corridor of the blueprint of the Jordan River. We looked at about a half mile on either side. One of the things that we've learned is that if we're trying to address things like water quantity and water quality, you can't do that looking at a narrow corridor because you have to think about all of the tributaries. And so building a stronger connection with Utah Lake and the new Utah Lake Authority that was just created in the last legislative session, looking at ways to develop improved relationship with the 13 tributaries on the east and west side of the valley that come from the mountain ranges, and looking at all of the inputs, looking at the inputs coming from water reclamation facilities as well. You know, there's a lot of interest in reusing water that come out of the water treatment plants. But we also need that water in the Jordan River, and the Great Salt Lake desperately needs all the water we can put in the lake. And so we have to think about watershed issues if we're going to improve the Jordan River. Looking at natural flows and natural functions. There aren't a lot of areas along the Jordan River that are natural any longer, but there are some really amazing projects down in Utah County and in parts of Salt Lake County. We're trying to preserve and enhance, especially things like floodplain. You know, we've seen flooding with some of these major storms. We had another one just this last Saturday. And because of all of the impervious surface, the water rushes to the Jordan River and it rises very quickly, sometimes 4 or 5 feet. Even areas that have been developed outside of the floodplain, we're getting calls now that we've got water seeping in our doors. And as we think about loss of floodplain, because that's where the water naturally would go, maybe restoring floodplain becomes an important part of how we restore some of those natural functions so that we don't get flooding, even in areas that have been identified as being outside the 100-year floodplain. We're starting to see affected and impacted. Hydrology and the functions of the river have been part of this blueprint from the very beginning. We're starting to see some really great implementation of that. This picture on the right side of the screen is the Big Bend Preserve that's being developed primarily by West Jordan City, but with a lot of other partners, state and federal partners, and has really been identified by the entire commission as a really critical project for everybody's success. It's one of those that's reincorporating and reintroducing new natural floodplain. This area of making the parkway welcoming for people of all abilities, all backgrounds, all circumstances. It was really wonderful to see so much enthusiasm around the Jordan River blueprint as we were working on this by organizations like Wasatch Adaptive Sports. They have done a detailed inventory of the entire Jordan River Trail and identified areas that are problematic for people that may be in adaptive equipment, whether it's in the water or on the trail. And it's wonderful to see these partnerships emerging that have given us a lot more insight into some areas that are really old that may need some enhancement or improvement to make them more accessible for people in adaptive equipment. Also looking at how we identify a lot of the cultural opportunities. You know, we have thousands and thousands of years of human history around the Jordan River. We're starting to see some of our tribal communities and indigenous communities that have expressed interest in seeing some of that history reflected in some of our cultural opportunities. And I'm sure with your cultural celebration center right on the west bank of the river, that's a really wonderful opportunity to highlight not only recent immigrants, but the indigenous communities that were here for thousands of years before more recent immigrants came. And these are incredible opportunities. We already have some great programs that have been developed for cleaning and trash removal. About 3 years ago, the Jordan River Commission brought on a full-time staff member who's now a full-time event and volunteer coordinator, Amy Horman, on our staff. And she does incredible work. Many cities and communities have volunteer programs already, and we're learning how to better tap into those. There's still room for improvement and coordination with all of the cities up and down the corridor. Last year, during the 9/11 Day of Service that many communities participated in with an interfaith council, we had over 8,000, we believe, volunteers along the Jordan River Parkway that came to do projects. And we're excited to see that returning this year on September 10th. And we're seeing a lot of those volunteers come back throughout the year to do things like managing weeds and picking up litter. And it's just really amazing to see all that's happening. This is a new goal entirely. Back in 2008, there were some evidence of people camping around the Jordan River. Of course, we've just seen an explosion in our unsheltered community. There have been a lot of efforts to try and develop new resource centers. One of those resource centers in South Salt Lake is right at the river's edge. And there are a lot of impacts that have come with that. We've benefited from some new funding streams to try and help address some of these impacts from the state legislature, and many communities are working to mitigate that. There's also been, just in the last year, the development of a statewide homeless coordinating council and a state office of homeless services. And we're working very closely with those organizations to help address the impacts of homelessness. We do know from recent point in time counts, which happen in January of every year, and just anecdotally with what we see and respond to as Jordan River Commission staff, that there is growth in the unsheltered community around the Jordan River, and it's having some real impacts. And so we know every community has a role to play in addressing housing and permanent supportive services. And there is a role we know that you can play as a community, particularly through the Council of Mayors, which is working on overflow shelters, primarily for the winter season, but we know we need those kinds of overflow opportunities all year. So there's roles that every community plays in helping to address this particular challenge. I won't go into a lot of detail on recreation. This is probably what people know and love most about the Jordan River Parkway. But as I mentioned, we are looking at ways to implement really consistent and frequent cleanup activities with volunteers primarily, to make sure that the investment in these recreation opportunities remain lovely and attractive and supportive of the communities that use them. The next section has to do with safety and security. And of course, this not only ties to public safety around issues like homelessness, but also making sure that maintenance is happening so that things that need to be repaired, you know, a natural river will erode banks, and eroding banks can sometimes undercut trails. We're seeing 3 or 4 areas. Pavement, which is subject to these really high temperatures that we're having right now, develops cracks. And those cracks, if not attended to, can become real safety issues. Of course, the counties, Utah County and Salt Lake County, play a huge role in that maintenance because they are the primary entities that manage a lot of the trail system. And so we're working to see that funding is going towards those routine maintenance. Lighting is a new section of the trail because of safety and security. A lot of people have asked for lighting. One of the recommendations to try and balance the natural need of dark skies and dark areas for wildlife, particularly the migratory wildlife. Our focus on lighting has been primarily on park and ride or trailhead facilities. So where people are coming and parking a car maybe early in the morning or late in the day and recreating, that there's lighting where they're parking during those activities. But by and large, we're not recommending adding a lot of lighting to the trail itself because that can be detrimental. Of course, there are some areas where that may be, there may be exceptions, and that may include areas around some of the homeless resource centers where more lighting may be necessary to avoid impacts or perceptions of unsafe conditions. Then improving this as a regional transportation system. This was one of the really surprising things to me. Maybe it shouldn't be surprising. We have major transit routes that cross the Jordan River. We have track stations on the Green Line here in West Valley and in Salt Lake on the Red Line, down in Midvale and South Jordan and West Jordan. And these have become really major connection points. A lot of people use the trail as part of that first mile, last mile infrastructure. I was really surprised the other day when I saw the final plan for the Mid-Valley Connector that will connect Murray and West Jordan, that there wasn't a transit station at the Jordan River Parkway Trail, where we've got a whole set of parks, and this is a first mile, last mile connection. So we're encouraging UTA and others that are working on that project to maybe rethink how we provide access for those important connections to the trail. During the survey, we found that almost 15% of people that took our survey out of those 8,000 respondents regularly use public transit to access the Jordan River Parkway, which is a pretty high level, and that was pretty significant. So we do see the trail as becoming a more important regional system. I don't know if all of you know this, but just about a year, maybe a year and a half ago, the Jordan River Parkway Trail was designated as an interstate trail. So much like we have interstate highways, I-15 and I-80, there is a movement nationally to designate interstate trails. I think there are 4 of them now that are designated interstate trails in Utah, and the Jordan River Parkway is part of one that's a north-south trail through the entire state of Utah, from southern Utah to northern Utah. And at some point, we may see some signage associated with that. We've encouraged that signage to be developed in conjunction with the signage that we already have as part of our wayfinding signage. I'll just note really quickly that, while most of the focus on the Jordan River is around natural systems, there are some places, including here in West Valley, where development, particularly historic industrial development, comes right up to the river's edge. And there was a lot of interest by the community in seeing some of those areas, maybe as they redevelop in the future, to become much more river-oriented centers. I think of the area around the Fair Park in Salt Lake, the area around the Cultural Celebration Center, the area around the South Jordan River Center. These are places where development is close to the river and where the river becomes a real amenity. It's great to see stores and shops starting to orient. I was riding my bike down in South Jordan the other day, and a little barbecue and cafe restaurant that are part of that South Jordan River Center have now opened up a patio right along the Jordan River Parkway with signage there saying, come on in and grab a bite or a snack. And it's really cool to see kind of that reorientation starting to take place. I don't think we'll ever be like the Riverwalk in San Antonio or the Boise, downtown, but there are a few specific sections where some things like that might make sense. I'll just back up here real quick. Infrastructure is a really big deal. We talked about water. Right now, many people don't realize, because we don't think about what happens to our storm drains when they go down through the curb or out of the parking lot, but almost all the storm drains in the Salt Lake Valley connect to the Jordan River. And so whatever is in those parking lots and streets, when we get heavy rains like we had last Saturday, it ends up in the river. And if you ever paddle the river, which we do a lot as we're cleaning up litter. We're cleaning up all the stuff that gets washed out of the storm drains. So thinking about those connections. Now, West Valley has done some really important work. The ponds just on the west side of the river, north of 33rd South, is part of that infrastructure development that creates a filtration system to filter out all of those debris and litter and sediment and stuff like that, so that the water entering the Jordan River is much cleaner. And you can see the outfall from the ponds there around 12th West and the Jordan River. That water outfall is much cleaner than typically what we see around highways. And so that was a really important infrastructure investment. And there are more of those that are needed to continue to enhance our stormwater systems. We're already working on a lot of the communications and messaging, although we included this as a goal. We have a great mobile site, myjordanriver.org. We're looking at doing some updating and enhancing to that this fall. During the blueprint development, we saw the final stages of installation of all of the signage that went along the Jordan River Parkway, wayfinding sign. We're still looking at funding some pavement markings to make it easier for people to identify the main trail, because sometimes it's a little easy to get lost, especially when trailheads look more like a main trail than some areas of the main trail do. So those are all important improvements. Looking at learning opportunities, we've identified at least 20 schools that are within a half mile of the Jordan River. And what a great learning experience for hands-on science education, studies of hydrology and wildlife and things like that for elementary school students and high school students. We have a handful of about 2 or 3 high schools, some of those in the Granite School District, that are already doing work to bring students down every year to continue monitoring and things like that. So it's really cool to see these. Placemaking opportunities are tremendous. And, your Cultural Celebration Center is one of those places that is really special to a lot of people. And we love to see the connections between those special places in the Jordan River that become parts of wayfinding and marking and community and cultural development. I'll just highlight, finally, there are a lot of appendices. All of these won't be in the printed document, which we're just finalizing and getting ready to send to the printer, but they'll all be available in the digital version online. The update to the Blueprint Jordan River was adopted by our governing board back in April. We're really appreciative not only of Mayor Lang and her current service on our board, but Mayor Bigelow, who served previously, also as one of our recent chairs of the Jordan River Commission, who are helping to make all of this possible. Thank you for your service. But these are just noted as reference documents. Many of them are completed documents in the last few years, surveys and other information that was all part of the blueprint development. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I know time's short. We may not have much time for that, but I'm happy to respond to any questions. Thank you for the opportunity to come and share what we're working on at a high level. And if any of you have other questions, I'd be happy to come and meet with you individually to follow up on anything that we're doing if you'd like more information.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions right now? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll now turn the time over to Nancy Day for our park maintenance update.
Good evening. So this is really a Greens and Open Space meeting today, isn't it? It's fun. I enjoyed Soren's presentation. So let me get started here. All right, so first of all, I'd like to thank all of you for all of your support for our Parks and Recreation Department, and we're going to talk about park maintenance, kind of give you a little bit more of an idea of what they really do in the park maintenance division of our department. We have to kind of go over that fairly quickly in the year-end report. So we're going to just jump right in and give you a little bit of an overview. So there's 85 properties. Better put my glasses on here. 85 properties. 34 of those properties are actual park properties. The rest encapsulate things like all the city properties that we take care of, streetscapes, Maverick Center, unimproved areas. So there's quite a bit that the trail systems and different segments as they've been completed over time. So there's quite a bit that this division takes care of, over 443 acres that they take care of, and almost 14 and a half miles of trails also. So we'll get on the next slide. We'll talk a little bit more about the acres per FTE. You can see that's 14.2. You recall in the year-end presentation, I always do a comparison. We're going to chat about that in just a second here. Excuse me, the staffing numbers. So we have 17 full-time and 18 seasonal, which are our caretakers and our summer temporary workers. I want to point out that this is the number of positions we have. It's not the number of people we have. We have a lot of positions that aren't filled right now, unfortunately, which puts more burden on those that we do have, and that makes it difficult. The shared responsibility, rather than in each slide for each division, putting some of the same things down, I wanted to point out that all of the employees, no matter which division they work in within this division, they all do snow removal of the parking lots, of the trails, those areas. They all help with event setup and support. That's things like Westfest or other events or activities that are going on. They get utilized quite a bit. And they all take care of the equipment that they use. They need to take care of it during the season, and they have to do major work on it even during the winter months. And if you have questions on any of these as I go, please stop me. So with all of our positions filled, so if all of our positions were filled, this is what it would look like, okay? The acreage comparison, so this is acres maintained per FTE. So one full-time employee takes care of 14.21 acres. That's where we're at right now. We always throw in some of other cities that we have data from, and it's hard to get data from all of them, but these are some that we have data from. And so you can kind of see where we fall. Now, this is better than we were a few years ago. We were closer to 16 acres. The one thing is we aren't quite this good right now because we don't have all of our positions filled. And so that makes it really difficult. And we're kind of barely making it, they're not able. And when we get to one of the other divisions, you'll see they're not able to get to all of the things that they need to get to, and quite honestly want to get to, that they take a lot of pride in, just because we've got the 14.21, but we don't have the positions filled. So actually it's higher than that, is where we're at. So that's kind of the reality where we are right now with that. So let's jump into some of the divisions. We're going to start with, yes.
Before you leave that,
Yes. Let me.
some questions. I noticed that
Absolutely.
ours is the biggest of those that are shown. Are there some that are not shown that that are bigger than ours, or are these just the ones that you know?
No, we have some, there's a couple that are close, but we don't have the most recent data from them. I believe Murray was pretty close to where we were at last year, and we don't have the recent data on them, so we didn't put those on there. But most are lower, some are lower than this as well, some of the other communities. So we've tried to reach out and get data from Salt Lake County as well, but they don't have the same kind of system in place to give us those numbers. Yes, sir.
Also sort of pertinent to that question, we sometimes in these presentations or at the year end, we talk about what our goal is too, right? Like where would we be happy at? And prove my memory wrong, I might be wrong here, but it seems like 12 is the number that we're sort of usually
That's
aiming for. Is that
correct.
correct?
Yes,
We
excellent
never really seem to
question.
quite get there because we add acreage or whatever, but.
Right.
So that just gives you another idea
Yeah.
in terms of comparison to other cities.
No, excellent question. And if you think over the last few years, the addition of trail space at the Mountain View corridor and things like that adds to the workload. But yeah, 12, we feel, and I've got great staff here, by the way, in case you ask a question I can't answer, that they will know it. But we feel like 12 would be very manageable, and we feel like we'd be able to do a really good job with that. Yes.
Just define full-time employee for me. Is it everybody in Parks and Rec, or is it just the maintenance people in Parks and Rec, or?
Great question. So in this case, for this division, it's just the park maintenance individuals. So, yeah, so the 40-hour a week. So it might be, you might have a couple seasonals, although we want them to work 40 hours a week. You might have a couple seasonals that make one FTE, but yeah, that's what this
So-
is depicting.
Directly involved with maintenance rather than.
Exactly.
Running the cultural center and.
Exactly. Yeah, great point. All of the slides that you'll see with the different divisions, they make up this number here. So, yes,
Does the acreage include county parks and the Mountain View corridor?
it includes the Mountain View corridor. It does not include the Salt Lake County parks since we don't maintain those. So we don't count the acreage of those parks. We do maintain the two that we received the last couple of years, Hillsdale and the Jordan River Trailhead Park, because we maintain those, but not the others.
Does it include unconstructed parks? Or is it just the constructed parks, the ones that are?
This is all of them. So these are the ones that we have the land that we still need to maintain. Obviously, they don't take as much maintenance, and you'll kind of see that a little bit here, but it includes all the acreage for all of that. And you may recall in a presentation I did a few months ago when we talked about the trails, we talked about how, we don't just take care of the actual trail itself, but we have to go off on either side of the trail and maintain the property there too. So there's a little more to it, than that.
Kind of like the dedication we're talking about next week.
Oh, right.
On either side.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yes, good point. Okay, all right. All right, so let's jump into irrigation. So I'll go through these slides fairly quickly. So please, again, stop me if you have any questions. This division has 4 full-time staff. And again, each of these will show the positions we have, not necessarily that all of them are filled. So just kind of keep that in mind. They maintain the irrigation systems for all the properties in the city out here at City Hall, on the streetscapes that you see, all of that takes care of all of the irrigation, all of the maintenance, the care. If we're changing some of the landscape and we need to go in and make changes, they take care of all of that. The backflow testing, the turn on in the spring, the blowout before winter, all of that, the audits. And they really work. We have the water to evapotranspiration because we're working with the smart clock technology. We have several bigger pieces that it's been installed. Recently, we've had to switch from the 3G to 4G. And so they have to go in and they have to make all of these changes as well as kind of their day-to-day things. So that's what that staff does in that area. Facility and Urban Plaza. The Urban Plaza is Fairborn Station, the Promenade. That's that position there. So that position is included in the 5 full-time staff. There's 8 park caretakers. Don't quite have those filled. If anybody knows anybody that's retired that wants to do it, send them my way. Graffiti, you have heard me say this several times. Graffiti is a problem for us right now, and that is not unique to West Valley City. I've talked with my colleagues all across the state. They're all seeing an uptake in that. We don't know why, but it's been really bad the last few years. So for example, you may recall this from my year-end presentation, but last year it went up. So the year previous, we were at 506 employee hours to take care of the graffiti. It went up to 810, which is in dollar terms from $21,000 to $37,000 to take care of that. This year to date, and these numbers I've had for a couple of weeks, we're over 500. We will surpass, I believe that we will surpass last year's, and that's a shame. And that makes it difficult. If you remember the acreage per FTE, this comes out of that as well. So they can't do some of the other things they need to do, right? Because everybody has to kind of help out and ease that burden. Vandalism repair, playground inspections and maintenance repair, all of that. They're certified playground inspectors. So they know what they're looking for and they do a good job keeping the playground safe. Care and maintenance of park amenities. So those would include the restroom structures you can kind of see on one of the pictures in the bottom left there. Pavilions, benches, tables, drinking fountains, everything that's in the park there. And then in addition to that, for our employee that's out here at the promenade, they also take care of the city fountains. They check the water daily, the river, that's on top of this, and then a few other things that we send his direction as well. All right, Forestry and Trails. So 2 full-time staff and a couple temporary park workers here. And I love trees, so I had to throw in the lungs of our land, right? I love that because they truly are. We have a lot of trees that this small group maintains and takes care of, and you can see the dollar value for those trees. And that's based off the size of the tree and different things as well. Today, we've planted 50 new trees in our city with volunteers and staff. And those take more care than the trees that are already existing, right? They have to be hand watered. They have to be watched and maintained and checked on more frequently to make sure that they're surviving and doing okay. They take care of all of the care that you can see there for the trees, and then also keep track of our city's tree inventory. So that's important. This group also takes care of all of our trails. And that also includes the trailheads that are associated with those. And they take care of the unimproved areas. So the land we have, we're not quite developing the park yet, or some of the streetscapes, that kind of thing. They take care of those things. So. Okay, so our construction guy, one person, we keep him pretty busy. He does a lot of things. He works with the construction of the new parks. He works with the contractors, even the Pioneer Crossing Park, that's a Salt Lake County park that's under development. He also goes there, talks to the contractors, talks to the people working to make sure that the city is represented and they're doing things in a manner that we would like them to do that. He also works with every other Parks and Recreation division, doing projects at the senior center, the fitness center, the cultural center. So like I said, we keep him pretty busy, but boy, he's a vital piece of what we do. And this is the last division. So we'll hurry along here. This is our turf, agronomy, horticulture, 3 full-time people. And when we have them, 8 temporary. These are the guys that do the mowing and the trimming, the edging, the blowing of the grass. And of course, mowing is our top priority. So if they're busy with some of these other projects, some of the other things we've talked about, edging doesn't always get done. And I can honestly tell you, you should be proud of the staff we have because that hurts them. They do not like leaving a property without edging, without being able to do that. But to stay on schedule, they can't do it. It's a huge challenge. And so, but they want to, and they take a lot of pride in that. All the flower beds and the shrubs, the maintenance, weed control, the applications you can see there, overseeding aeration when we need to do that as well. Sportfill Maintenance, and you can see it's not just the mowing, but on the top right, that's the baseball fields, right? Or the softball, either one, where you've got outfield to infield, lips. And it's not a once in a while and you're done kind of thing. That's an ongoing. So there's a lot of that. And to keep some of these national tournaments coming, we need to keep those fields in pristine condition. And then, of course, they take care of all of their equipment that ties into all of this. So on the last slide that I have here, I just want to talk about a couple things. Technology. We talked a little bit about the irrigation system and how it works with the ET, the evapotranspiration, and it gets information from the weather stations that are in different locations, different ways to get the data that it needs. And once we are able to get that finished in the parks, especially, that saves us not only in water use, which is environmentally the right thing, but it's also financially the right thing, but it also saves us in personnel. And so there's a lot of value to that. The state web-based tree inventory system, we use that. So they keep track of the number of trees and it's updated as we plant new ones. So that's in that system. So we use that. We would like additional trail cameras or park cameras. We have 9 right now, but again, we're growing. And they help us as we're trying to find things or catch things or catch people. And then I mentioned this in one of my previous presentations on our GPS robot that lines the sports fields. I don't know if you recall that or not. It's really a pretty cool device. What used to take our guys at least a full day and sometimes a day and a half, depending on what sports were going on. This little device can do in 2 hours, and the staff can do other things at the same time it's running. So that was a great investment for us. Our challenges, some of these I've already mentioned, graffiti and vandalism, graffiti being, of course, the worst part of that, but it's both very difficult. And kind of heartbreaking, right? We make these great parks and facilities. We had a great ribbon cutting. Thank you, Mayor, for your comments there. I appreciate that. And so we just really want people to take care of them and kind of be on the lookout and things. So, but it's been a challenging few years for that, for sure. The aging infrastructure, that would be things like our pavilion, our playgrounds, the things that don't need as frequent maintenance, but they're capital. The concrete work that's at the softball fields out at Centennial, right? There's a lot of different things that are kind of expensive, but they have to be taken care of so we can maintain our amenities. Another challenge is the capital infrastructure maintenance. This will be our asphalt work, more concrete work, our sports courts, basketball, pickleball, tennis. There's a lot of different things like that would fall under that category. I mentioned personnel. We're better, but we still have a ways to go. So we can get to where we need to be, with the FTE per acreage. And then the drought, which is a challenge for a lot of people. Our guys do a great job with conserving water, but you can see it in some of the parks, and that makes it a challenge, but something that we know right now is something we have to deal with. Some of our goals here that I listed, just a few. We still seek funding opportunities. We're able to get different grants. You've seen those as I've brought them to you to help offset costs. It's not enough, but it helps. And so we continue to seek more and more. Increased technology options, like I talked about above there, and conservation efforts. And one that I would throw in, which kind of ties in with some of this, is just raising the level of park care. You see that data and that information each year as it comes out to you. We'd like to get more at that level 4 or level 3 area. That just, that's just kind of where the reality and the challenge we're at. Again, our staff feel very committed. They love our parks. They know how much our community loves our parks. You probably recall on the study we did with Utah State a couple of years ago, the residents, 85% said that open and green spaces were either very or extremely important to them. 85% of West Valley City residents, and a majority of West Valley City residents use their neighborhood parks regularly or frequently. And we see that, our guys see that. And so that's why it's so important to us. And obviously I know to you and to our community, but the challenges are real, and we're certainly trying to do what we can to make it work, but that's where we're at. So are there any further questions I can answer?
The council, any questions?
All right.
Great job.
Thank you.
Good use of the trees for our farmers market and West Fest. The trees are now big enough. They really are an asset. So
That's very nice. Thank you.
and natural shade is much cooler than a pavilion.
Absolutely.
All right. The council calendar, are there any questions or things that were missed? Okay. Potential future agenda items. I have something on my phone. I can't remember what it was. Hang on. Anybody else though?
It may not be an agenda item, just a question, but with the app not working, or I guess the app's no longer a thing, the West Valley City app.
Oh, the app. I should know that right off the top of my head. The old one for sure is not working. We stopped that one. We may be in development of a different one, or with it. I'll have to get back to you from the IT stand, because I can't remember where we left that exactly.
'Cause I reported some graffiti this morning on a trail and just going through the website was cumbersome, so.
Now, we definitely did and are in the midst of improving. We've changed the reporting system for graffiti code enforcement, fixing things like potholes, that sort of thing. We're trying to get more aggregated all to one area. So I'll get with you and get you where the connection to that is. If we haven't made that more clear, is probably because we're still in sort of the early, it's not like early beta. We're using it out there with residents, but it's not fully developed. And I think a lot of the, I think there's just further uses for it we may not have thought completely through. So we're hoping to gain input and modify as we go. So I'll get with you on where we're at with that. In fact, if we've got time in between meetings, I'll take you over and show you how Angel's using that, where we would happy to be able to access it. We just started that up. It's been 2-3 weeks ago, something like that. Of course, time's starting to compress for me, so maybe it's more like 1 or 2 months ago. I don't know, but sometime in the fairly recent past.
Okay, mine is for later, so we'll wait on that one. So seeing none on the internet and nothing here, we'll move on to council reports. Mr. Christensen.
I did attend several, not all, but several of the Family Week events last week. Those that I attended were well attended. Had residents there, a lot of involvement. Again, I wish we could have advertised it a little bit more because the advertising came out about a week before it happened. And, a lot of that happens. I understand. But other than that, farmers market this Thursday they had moved it around a little bit, so we were able to walk on the sidewalk more than stumbling through the grass where there are some hidden holes and landmines, things like that. So, but it was very well attended. Other than that, we're just keeping up. And I wish we could do something with just the overall publication and advertisement of some of these activities that are happening.
Well, keep in mind with the family,
It was-
as an example, that was one of the interns' placemaking projects. So this wasn't even a concept until 8 weeks ago. So she had to conceive it, plan it, program it, find people to participate. And given the short time frame she had, she actually did go put a lot of effort into door to door and or face to face type marketing, as well as the normal channels. One of the concepts has always been with the placemaking projects that it's sort of this trial by fire sort of a concept, right? If it's good, maybe we'll expand on it and assign it to its department, or even do some other, use some other methodology to expand that concept. And this one was really pretty well received. So one of the reasons that we had, and it's Claudia, by the way, is the name of the intern. And the reason we assigned that to parks is we saw the best chance of success for that to actually have some impact. Now, Claudia, of course, didn't know about this coming in as an intern, but incorporating it into the parks as a sort of regular summer schedule of events that also would give the Parks Department an opportunity to sort of evaluate it and see, okay, yeah, let's do that. Look at it, and maybe we do want to continue it on in the next year. And then, of course, we'll have the opportunity to market it out at a further lead time.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Went to a number of block parties last week. I saw you at one.
I know, and didn't even get to say hi to you.
I know.
Sorry.
I said hi and
Yeah,
kept talking to others too, but it was a lot of fun. I'm excited for some more.
they are enjoyable.
Yeah.
Some people think they've got to be a pain, but they really are fun, I think.
Our neighborhood's doing one and they're doing a couple of them, but yeah, I'm gonna be busy doing visiting others. Yeah, that's fun.
Okay, yeah, I think, I enjoyed, I made it, I think, 3 of the neighborhood party. And because somebody will grab you, you can't make it to the 6 you're planning on, you make it to the 3 that you can make it to. So that is kind of a challenge, but
I only had one
Three in
person
2
grab
hours.
me, so I made it to all 6 I was planning on.
You did?
I did.
what shirt did you wear?
Blue t-shirt.
Okay.
polo shirt.
How many hot dogs did you have then?
None.
None?
That was the other.
My last one, I had a hot dog.
I didn't have to stop for the hot dog.
It was like 8:30 or something. And then I do have to say that the family week, I mean, it's just, we get so busy with life, we forget. So we took all the grandkids and went bowling at Delta, and it was awesome. They had a great time, and that 3 games for the $10 with your rental and everything was just the perfect amount of time to take them. And so she did a good job lining those
You
up.
did.
So that was a good program. And then I felt at our last time we met to bring up how successful the parades were and all the hard work from Parks and Public Works. Public Works was the vehicle and the guiding it. And then Public Relations, Roxanne did a good job.
And whenever you get the Public Works Director to be the walker, it's.
We felt privileged. It was good. And he's been there enough. He knew the ropes. That was my first parade, that of the 47 days. So that was kind of fun. So I think that's all for me. All right, do we have a need for a closed session?
No, man.
Okay, just one last action.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye. We are adjourned. And because this evening may be a late evening,